Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, people of the world. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by a special guest. Well, I'm going to get right to it. You know that I'm the Prince of Positivity. I'm the King of Kindness, the unofficial mayor of Mason. And kindness is one of my pillar core values, right? I think that we all have opportunity to just show love to others. And so I'm joined by a special guest that's really elevated kindness, not only in his area of the United States, but all over the world. I'm joined by the founder and chief kindness chaser, Kevin Smith, who is a part of Kindness Worldwide. And so, Kevin, that was as much of a plug. Tell the listeners a little bit more about who you are. And we're going to have a great conversation about kindness today.
Oh, how you doing, Phil? It's wonderful to be here. It's an honor to be here. It's a privilege to be here. And thank you for all that you are doing and have done in the kindness space. It's not a coincidence you are an ambassador of Kindness Worldwide. So, but yeah, a little bit of background about me. I mean, the truth is, Phil, I'm just an ordinary guy who was touched by the actions of an ordinary woman who did an extraordinary thing. She was kind. And I was a beneficiary of an act of kindness on Good Friday morning, 2023. A routine trip to the grocery store. My wife sent me to the store to pick up a couple items on a simple honey-do list. And I did that just fine. But when I returned home, I realized I left my wallet behind. And in that precise moment, panic sets in, and my finger's literally on the panic button, which is the ignition button of my car, because I knew I had to have left my wallet behind at the store. There's a young woman in my driveway holding my wallet, asking if it was mine. And it was all captured on Ring doorbell footage and whatnot. And it just, I thanked this young woman at the time, had the impulse to ask her name before she drove away, and offered her a monetary reward she refused to accept. And when I walked back inside, I was just overwhelmed by what had just occurred. I was inspired by it. Most of the news that we see and read every day is negative, and it's the exception, not the norm. But it kind of was an epiphany for me to see the good and recognize that good and kindness are everywhere. That is the norm. It's not the exception. But I simply wanted to, at the time, I felt I should have done more to thank this woman in a more meaningful way. And really from that point on, an innocent attempt to identify who this young woman was, thank her in a more meaningful way, go the extra mile for her like she literally did for me. It took on a life of its own. It became an adventure of a lifetime. It really is impossible to describe. It's actually the subject of a movie that's coming out soon. Mm-hmm. And it just became about making a meaningful difference. And it's really all about my why. I've lived my life shaped by the values of my upbringing and my mother in particular, but I've always felt that the meaning of life is to live it in a way to make a meaningful difference. And, pathways miraculously open to do just that. I mean, it all inspired me to form Kindness Worldwide, just to pay it forward, so to speak. And Kindness Worldwide has a vision to create a culture of kindness in communities throughout the world, something I think we all agree that our world needs more of. And I used to feel powerless to do anything about all the things that would frustrate me and frustrate all of us about the world. I mean, there's certainly so much unkindness from time to time. And, I think there are leaders who I think need to be leading with kindness, which is a strength. There's too much division. And I used to be frustrated and feel, what can I do about it? I'm just an ordinary guy. And this whole adventure, actually, again, it became an epiphany to realize, you know what, maybe I can do something about it after all. So instead of feeling powerless, I now feel empowered to do everything in my power to actually try to be a catalyst for change, to lead by example, really try to manifest this vision of Kindness Worldwide, which has become a global movement. Just try to do my part. And if we all do just that, kindness is a choice. If we all just try to be the reason someone believes in the goodness of people, which we each have the ability to do just by simple choice to be kind, we literally can change the world. And that's what the vision of Kindness Worldwide is all about.
So what was your background? Because obviously it's a very formal thing. What is your professional background? Business, politics, journalism, to you formalized it, you made a actual organization, but what was your background before this?
Yeah, well, in the first part of my career, I was a corporate executive. I had a 12-year career at a Fortune 500 company at the time, a paper company. And I quickly rose the corporate ranks. And 12 years into it, I was promoted to a director of its largest business unit. On
Mhm.
paper, so to speak, everything was great and fine. And the C-suite next, that was the next promotion. But the further up the ladder I got, Phil, the less meaningful it was. I mean, paper's important, but not exactly going to change the world. And so I had an epiphany in my early 30s that life's too short to not enjoy what you do. And so I decided to leave the corporate world cold turkey just right after my most recent promotion. People thought I was crazy because, again, on paper, things looked great, but I was miserable. It wasn't meaningful. And so I started a wealth advisory practice 25 years ago. It's very meaningful to me to help translate my clients' monetary resources into meaningful life experiences, and to really have an impact on people's lives. And I built a team, successful practice. I still have that. That's what I do by day, but I've got a team of 6 to do that. And then those skill sets that really have shaped my career in the corporate world and then in the financial world have really been instrumental in entrepreneurship and all the things. I never considered myself an entrepreneur. But I look back over my life and I realize I've always been a visionary thinker. I've always been an unconventional thinker. I've never lived conventionally. I've always think out of the box. And all of those skills, all those talents, if you will, have really been instrumental. And then now building what has become a global organization. It's still in kind of the bootstrapping phase, but it's a movement. And it's the nice thing is kindness is free. The movement costs nothing. There are things that are going to take resources, but I'm building something that's bigger than me. But it's nothing. I've never been a part of something so meaningful. Literally, the objective is to change the culture, to change the world. Get people focused again on what unites. There's so much focus on the divisions. Kindness is the universal language. It brings everyone together. It transcends all differences. It transcends borders and cultures and differences and language. And it's just something our world needs now more than ever. The title of the film is For Such a Time as This, which I think is the perfect title. But that's a bit about my background and kind of really what's led me on this magical journey to form kindness worldwide.
So you have now it makes perfect sense. You already had a corporate background. You already had an entrepreneur background. That day happened in 2023, I'm hearing.
On
What
Good
was the
Friday
first,
morning of all days
yeah,
is when this act of
yeah.
kindness occurred.
So what was the first step? Did you just start writing? Did you draft that organization proposal? How did you take it and say, yo, I'm gonna make it a formalized thing?
Yeah, well, the beauty is it literally organically evolved and almost by accident. I wanted to identify who this young woman was. I discovered her on Facebook due to a profile picture of her and her dog. There was a news story about what occurred, and the story went viral. And I didn't even know if this young woman was even aware of the story, because I thought if any news organization would cover the story of how this inspired me, that it might inspire others. But more importantly, I thought if this young woman would see the story, it would be a way of thanking her in a more meaningful way. And the story aired. It went viral. It was all over the country practically. And I didn't even know if this young woman was aware of it. So all I knew was her first name, which is Brooke. And I just did a Facebook search. I was about to give up after 30 minutes of scrolling. I thought I might see something that would resonate. Then a profile picture of this young woman or dog caught my eye, and it was her. And at the time I said, hey, are you the Brooke in the story? And I sent her a link to the segment. And sure enough, it was her. And she actually thanked me for thanking her, Phil. She was very humble and modest throughout. But she made a comment at the time that really stuck with me. She said, I'm just the blurry face. Because on the Ring doorbell footage that they showed in this news segment, they blurred out her face to protect her identity. Because no one knew who she was at the time. And I'm like, no, you're more than a blurry face. You're this wonderful act of kindness. But that comment stuck with me. And then the day later, Inside Edition became aware of the story. And they were going to do a story with this young woman and I was excited because she will no longer be the blurry face. Everyone's going to know who this young woman was and is and the wonderful things she did. But last minute, another storyline emerged, and that interview with Inside Edition was canceled. The story never aired. And I'm like, now what? I mean, I still felt I should do something more to get this woman the public recognition she deserved. And then another twist of fate, series of coincidences, a second lost wallet from someone, the executive director of the York County SPCA. Coincidences you wouldn't believe. It led to the idea of having a community celebration of kindness to publicly recognize this young woman. It was going to be at the York County SPCA because a connection with pets was how I, found her on Facebook. And then I started thinking about, well, what does a community celebration of kindness entail? And it occurred to me that we don't do enough to really elevate kindness as a society, to celebrate kindness. And I knew there was a World Kindness Day, right? But I'm like, well, is there a World Kindness Week? And I did a Google search, and there really wasn't anything. And then I found something on a website, that said, the World Kindness Movement is trying to get, Kindness Week recognized by the United Nations. It hasn't happened. I'm like, well, why hasn't it happened? It should happen. And I also saw where it was National French Fry Day one day. And I'm like, look, I don't know about you, Phil. I like French fries. French fries are good, but too many French fries, not good. You can never have too much kindness. And so I thought, well, why don't we, celebrate? And that's officially recognize a Kindness Week. So I got York City Mayor Helfrich to do that. And then I got the York County Commissioners. And I'm like, why not the neighboring county, Adams County Commissioners? And why not Governor Shapiro? And I got everyone to kind of recognize Kindness Week. And then I thought, well, what does Kindness Week entail? So we elevated, we formally recognized Kindness Week. And then it occurred to me that, we can make blood donation part of the framework. We can inspire people to donate blood, literally save lives. And it's a great way of paying an act of kindness forward, symbolic of the ripple effects of kindness. And then it occurred to me as a way of improving police-community relations. Why don't we have the police issue kindness citations? See the good in our communities that defines our communities. Yes, we got to protect our communities and we got to look for the bad, but why not change the paradigm? So the idea of kindness citations emerged. And the next thing I knew, Phil, this took on a life of its own. All these ideas kept coming for what this community celebration of kindness would entail. I had a document on paper. My wife said I should keep a journal. All the people I was meeting with, and I was meeting with people day after day, all these ideas and how they could be part of this, how they could help me manifest this vision I knew was possible. And I was starting to write my objectives down. And coincidentally enough, it was August of 2023. It was just 5 months into this.
Okay.
I had this document with my objectives and the timeline at the time. It was like 75 pages long at the time. It was on my family room table. I'm sitting in my corner chair, Phil, and at that time, I'm spent. I'm exhausted. I wasn't sleeping much. I mean, the ideas kept getting bigger and bigger, and I just wanted this event to be over. I wanted to get my life back because I had a life of balance and comfort before this began, and this was starting to take on a life of its own. And in that life-work balance, the pendulum was skewed. And so I'm in my corner chair, my family room. I got my dog to my right, some coffee to my left. I'm in my happy place. My brother-in-law, whose name is Michael Binko, happened to be visiting for the weekend. And Michael is very well known in the entrepreneur space. He's like the pioneer of the ecosystem model. His whole career has been about advising startup companies, and he works in that space. He knows this space. He happens to be coincidentally reading this document that's laying on my table, and he's reading it. And after 45 minutes, he looks up at me, and his exact words, Phil, he said, "Kevin, do you realize you have created in 5 months a sustainable, replicable model that has a higher probability of success than the most promising startup companies he's ever worked with takes 5 years or more to do?" And honest to God, Phil, I looked at him like, what model are you talking about? In my mind, I'm just creating this wonderful community event to recognize this young woman. The event's going to be over, and then I go back to my former life, and everything's honky-dory.
And you were aiming for this event from that time.
Well,
the November was supposed to be a November 2023 event, correct?
That's correct. So by then, it kept getting pushed out because I wasn't ready. So the event was going to be this summer, wasn't ready yet, and it kept getting pushed out. And then it occurred to me, I said, well, why don't we just bookend World Kindness Day, Saturday to Saturday, not just 7 days. Let's make it 8 days. I feel kindness deserves an extra day in the week. So we made it 8 days, not 7. And by then, Phil, I'd identified what I felt, I call now the 8 characteristics of kindness. I felt kindness needs to be broken down into its fundamental elements. I mean, we talk about kindness, but I felt we got to break it down more to hold each other accountable to a higher standard so we can define it better. So I identified 8 characteristics. And then just real quickly, those characteristics of kindness are gratitude, patience, forgiveness, empathy and compassion, respect, joy, generosity, and service. So by then I had this framework, and then we pushed it out. I thought, well, why don't we just showcase and elevate World Kindness Day by booking in it, Saturday to Saturday, make it 8 days, win-win all the way around. So that's how it got to be November. So it kept getting pushed out. So, by then and by August, all this was laid out on paper, and just, we weren't ready yet, but everything was moving towards November and this event. And then I'm just going to go back to my, my happy place again, my former life of balance and comfort. And then my brother-in-law, he said, Kevin, this framework for Kindness Week, he said, this is something we can bring to communities anywhere and everywhere. He said, our world needs this now more than ever. He says, you cannot stop with York and Adams County in Pennsylvania. He said, you've got to start a nonprofit.
There you go.
And he goes on, he searches online. He said, Kevin, a domain name's available, and it's not Kindness PA. It's not Kindness York, PA. It's Kindness Worldwide. And honestly, Phil, when he said that, he said, you can't stop with York. And that was a point where, and I kind of felt it. I kind of knew how big this was becoming. Honestly, Phil, my head went down and my shoulders sank. And I knew in that moment my life would never be the same, because I knew he was right. And I saw a pathway to actually bring people and communities together at a time our world does need it now more than ever. And I honestly felt, Phil, that if I don't pursue this for selfish reasons, because again, I wanted my life back. I wanted this event to be over. All I wanted to do was see that this woman was publicly recognized. But once this organically evolved, accidentally, and he said that, and he pointed out to me what I'd accidentally created, I knew he was right. And if I didn't pursue it, I couldn't live with myself. My conscience would not let me, for selfish reasons, say, nope, Michael, I hear you, but I want my life back. I'm not going to do this. And that's why I knew the rest of my life was going to be committed to this effort. And I never envisioned starting a nonprofit, let alone one called Kindness Worldwide. It's called Worldwide for a reason, because this movement is literally spreading throughout the world. It's bigger than me. And I've just had to figure it out as I go along. I've just had to let go, get comfortable being uncomfortable, and do my part. And now we're bringing an ecosystem together of advocates like yourself and others who actually see this vision, believe it's possible, working together, speaking with one voice to actually bring more kindness into a world that needs it now more than ever.
I love that. And I think we have to do a part 2, because I didn't tell you I'm on a tight time one for this one, but I definitely want to have a few questions before. One is that I love that you have made it available for others to try to implement. And I'm going to give you the example is the proclamations that you can give to local officials. You provided that template. I like to say that George Mason University and our Mason Chooses Kindness implemented that template. And now we have World Kindness Week declared in the city of Fairfax, which is the adjacent city right next to the university.
Yeah,
the question I have
is Speak Worldwide. Yes, you did. That was wonderful. Yeah. I saw that.
And it has your thing. It says, in addition with your, it shuts out your nonprofit. The question for you that I think I'd like to explore publicly is that now that we got it proclaimed as a week, what should we do with that next year for World Kindness Week now that it's proclaimed? Is this where you say you go to the city of Fairfax and say, let's do nice things in the city? Like, what's the next step for people that have implemented your proclamation system?
Yeah, well, there's several aspects. Well, the technical term we use is Kindness Week Worldwide, because 8 days, not a typical week. Right. But the vision, again, the ultimate goal of this movement, and it is a movement, is to elevate kindness to the global shared value that represents all of humanity. And that entails not just having one governors appear in Pennsylvania, but all 50 governors should formally recognize Kindness Week Worldwide, just like, Fairfax and communities, small towns, big cities, states, right? And every member of the United Nations should be able to do the same. The United Nations is about peace, right? Well, you cannot have peace in our world without a culture of kindness. And there's so much division. Can't we all agree on the need for kindness? Let's start on what unites. And that there's actually a pathway for all that to happen. And when enough of us insist upon that we look at the world through a standard of kindness, there's no reason not to, every reason we must. But it's not just about the proclamations. The proclamations are largely symbolic. Symbolism matters, okay? It's important. But the next step of that is to have a municipality, have a state, a governor formally recognize Kindness Week worldwide, and then inspire, its residents. Well, what does that mean? Well, Veterans Day, the way the calendar falls, Veterans Day will always fall during Kindness Week worldwide. Many of the veterans who defend the freedoms we enjoy have literally shed their blood for the freedoms we enjoy every day. What better way to honor our veterans, to show our gratitude and respect for their service, which are 3 of the 8 characteristics of kindness? What better way to honor them than to donate our own? We can inspire people to do that, right? And that can save lives. Kindness citations. We want to bring kindness citations to police departments in every community, state police departments, local police departments. We had over a dozen police departments in York County, Pennsylvania, issuing kindness citations last year. Westminster, Maryland, issuing kindness citations. We want to bring that model to other communities because, again, it's a way of improving police-community relations. It's a way of recognizing the citizens who make our communities so vibrant and so great. Let's see the good in them, and let's acknowledge them. And what that does, it creates a ripple effect. It becomes contagious. It invites other acts of kindness, right? And you can see how this can easily evolve. But we also want to just organically, we want to engage ecosystems, schools, colleges, business community, government bodies, to everyone to be intentional. We have a framework, but everyone can think intentionally, what does Kindness Week worldwide mean to us? What can we do to promote and encourage kindness?
So then the reverse engineering is now that it's symbolically proclaimed in the city of Fairfax. Now it's more so, as we move forward to next year, thinking of concrete activities to be aligned with that, and I think that's where I was trying. So would it be on, it's on the local, it's on the community once they proclaim it, to now moving forward next year, we have a whole almost, close to 11 months now to think of activities for the next week, that next year's week. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is exactly right. Now we have a framework, and we have some actionable ideas for schools and things on our website. We'll be putting more up, but the beauty of it is that kindness has no limitations. We're limited only by the bounds of imagination and creativity. And I truly believe, Phil, because I've seen this, if we just set the tone through a proclamation and a framework, and we have good leadership, it starts with leaders who see kindness as a strength, who don't just say, hey, here's a proclamation. They actually believe in it, inspire residents, and you let your ecosystems know, hey, we're part of this Kindness Week worldwide celebration. We are our own community, but we're part of a global community. We're all part of this global celebration of what I believe is humanity's greatest asset. If we let everyone with intentionality, ecosystems, schools, businesses, think about, what does Kindness Week worldwide mean to you? What can you do to celebrate the spirit of Kindness Week? Maybe it's collecting coats for the shelterless during winter to keep them warm. Maybe it's collecting food for the food pantries, to feed the homeless. Maybe it's just being intentional about being kind. If we can concentrate effort and energy into 8 days every year, hopefully that will then set the tone for mindful habits and behaviors that extend throughout the year. Because the goal to create a culture of kindness is not just those 8 days of Kindness Week worldwide, it's develop habits through it. It's every year. It becomes a way of life. But that can only happen if we are intentional about it. And we are thinking of kindness in that way. And that's really what this movement is all about. Let's start with 8 days and let's develop habits that extend throughout the year and beyond, and reminding everybody that we have the power to be the change we wish for. We can choose to be kind. We can choose to be the reason someone believes in the goodness of people. Any way we choose, there are various ideas, but it's so the freedom is to just embrace it in any way that we want.
Well, I definitely I just got a ring that I got some duties that I had to attend to. So I definitely think we need to do a part two of this because we just touched the tip of the iceberg. But before we get off, I want to do a segment called Shot for Shot. You get to ask me any random question, and I get to ask you any random question. You want to go first, or I go first?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, what would you say in your mind
Okay.
when I say be the reason someone believes in the goodness of people? What comes to your mind as to how you are that reason?
Well, how I'm a reason that someone was that the reason that someone
Yeah. So when
believes
I
in
say,
believes in the goodness of people. How do I accept that?
in other words, what do you do when I say be the reason someone believes in the goodness of people? What in your mind, what is it that you do through the leadership of your example that does just that?
Uh, I mean, put me on. I mean, I think it's just more so like encouraging belonging. Like you could be your goofy, you could be your authentic self. I try not to judge. You know, uh, I know that I'm not super happy or perfect at all. But if someone could say it anything, at least you know when I do try, Philip made me feel like I belong where I'm supposed to be. So whether I belong, I'm at work, they say, yo, Phil made me feel like I belong at work. My kids, my dad makes me feel like I belong at home. My wife makes me feel like he belongs, I belong with him as a partner. So I think that's my main word. I think the word belonging there is that like, as long as you feel like included or make you feel included or heard or seen or valued, I think that's where I think people can see the goodness in the world is at least that attempt. Do I do it perfectly all the time? No, not at all. But I know I try to make people feel like they belong or try to be kind and that thing. So belonging, that's the first word that popped in my head. Beyond kindness is belonging. Like, Phil, you made me feel like I belong here, that kind of thing. And then
I
you
love it.
do.
I love it. Well, you also it's similar. Like you also everyone wants to be seen. Not just visually, but they want to be understood and appreciated, and that's exactly what you do. And I saw that in you early on, and I'm like, Phil seems like someone who checks off all the boxes to be a kindness worldwide ambassador because that's really what you're doing every day, just by leading by example and seeing the good in others, seeing their heart space. And so thank you again for the leadership of your example.
And that's also not taking myself so seriously.
You and me both.
Yeah, I was like, I make a lot of mistakes, like you can be real. All right. So inversely, what is a underrated impact of kindness? People, I discuss that the myths of it, you're kind, you're a pushover, that all, but then you're like, no, no, no. This is the underrated impact. Being kind will do this impact that you don't think about when you think of kindness. What is one of those unrated
Well,
impacts of kindness?
well, the little things are the big things. We underestimate those little things. Simply calling someone by name is a way for someone to be seen. Hearing their stories, we're often very quick to talk too much instead of listening more. We want to, share about our stories, but everyone has a story and everyone is dealing with something behind the scenes. But I don't buy this argument that kindness is a weakness. I think people who say that is an excuse because kindness is a strength. And I'm telling you, because I've lived it, it is hard. There's like confetti kindness, the simple things, right? And they're important. No act of kindness is too small. But deep kindness, I mean, it's hard. It's a strength. When someone is unkind to us, our first impulse is to be unkind back, right? It is a strength through self-awareness to not receive that energy, not return that energy, but take the high road. I believe those who say kindness is a weakness, they're using it as an excuse because, by saying that, they don't have to do the hard work. They don't have to go the extra mile, so to speak. They don't have to be strong. And there's a whole science that backs this. I mean, people don't realize the brain science, the neuroplasticity of science of kindness. I mean, acts of kindness, when you are kind, it actually creates, all the endorphins and dopamine and all the chemical reaction in our bodies. People live longer. They live their healthier lives. It reduces the risk of dementia. Just observing acts of kindness does all that. And so I just think that there's a lot of myths about kindness. But kindness is very simple. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be grandiose. It just can be those little simple things that are very easy to do. And yet for some odd reason, for many, they're just so hard. It's just trying to change the paradigm and realizing that we have control if we choose to be kind. And if we do that, it will literally change the world around us. It'll change the lives of others. It'll change our own lives. And it can actually ultimately change the world. I've lived it. My story is living proof of it. But those little things are really the big things. And we all have the ability to do those each and every day.
I love it. And, before I do, go to the part of shout outs and plugs, I think one of the things that resonates is that there is a difficulty in it. Like, it could be easy to be let's say you're a football coach, and it could be easy just to yell and berate people, but it's very, very, it takes more work as a coach to really like look at why things are going on and be empathetic and like, rather than berate, understand individual motivations of different players and stuff like that. You can't just yell at everyone the same, but that's more work. So when someone's like, they don't listen to me when I'm too nice, I think you're right. Like, they're just being lazier. It is harder to be a kinder coach or whatever. So I like that idea. It's like almost like you're putting in extra work by being kind. And it is not supposed to be easy to do so, but it's going to yield a lot more, because most times people are going to say to that was a good football coach because they become champion team rather than just a bunch of, quitter, people that quit on the team because they probably had a bad coach, right? So I like that. It's harder. It's a harder style of leadership to be a kind leader. It's a more difficult leadership.
But your best leaders truly are those that lead with kindness and see it as a strength, because you're shaping a culture, you're shaping a team. And character wins championships. You can have a lot of talent, but there's a lot of talented teams that never win championships, but character is really the differentiator, and that takes a good leader. It's also been said that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. Right. And when you care, empathy, and you really connect with people and see their heart space, and their stories, now you're creating, fans for life and people that will follow because they believe in you. And once people believe in you, they will follow the leadership of your example.
Excellent. Well, there's been, like I said, this is a little shorter than my normal episodes, but I definitely want to have you on another time. Definitely talk about follow-up about the things that we're doing with kindness here at George Mason, and just really elevate that. And also almost like a recap, like talk about the things that what is coming to fruition since getting together, and really looking forward to your film that's coming out. So with that being said, the platform is yours. Shout outs and plugs. There's an opportunity to show love to anyone you want to show love to. And then plugs. These are things that I'll make sure to include in the show notes so that people can follow up, websites, links, references, etc. So shout outs and plugs.
Well, I've got to have a shout out to my wife. She's really the unsung hero in this whole journey. And a lot of people don't realize the journey of kindness worldwide and everything behind the scenes. It's not been easy. Love is sacrifice. And my wife was the reason I went to the grocery store on Good Friday morning. If it weren't for her, none of this would have unfolded. But when things are going really well, Phil, we have a good moments, and things are going really well with this journey. I say to my wife, I said, you know what? You're the one that sent me to the store. But a lot of times it's very intense and very time intensive, and it takes a lot of my time and energy. And, there are some difficult moments, and it's not been easy. And of course, I jokingly say to my wife, well, you're the one that sent me to the store. But the truth is that my wife is my biggest fan, my biggest advocate. She's my rock. And I know a lot of times, people focus on me as the founder of Kindness Worldwide. And, I'm not comfortable with all that undue attention. It's not warranted, but I really feel that my wife has played such an instrumental role in this journey. She's my best friend. And so I would be remiss if I did not give that shout out to her.
And then plugs, ways that we can stay in touch, follow along for the listeners of this episode.
Yeah, well, plugs. I would encourage everyone to join the movement with us. And, this is more than a movement. It's a revolution. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change the culture, right? So visit kindnessworldwide.org. There are 3 brief videos that you can kind of get some background as to the story that inspired the formation of Kindness Worldwide. There are links and resources, including to the proclamation of Kindness Week Worldwide, which we want to bring to communities anywhere and everywhere. There's also a documentary film for such a time as this that we are in the midst of doing private screenings. Love to bring a private screening of the film to Phil, where you are, any community. We're entering it in the film festivals. The film festival circuit begins in January, and there's certain rules we have to adhere to, but we can do private screenings. The more audiences that see this film, the more lives will be touched and changed and honestly saved. It's that powerful of a film. So I just would, it's really a plug, not for Kindness Worldwide. This it is for us. But Kindness Worldwide is our nonprofit. I always say that because it truly is. It's an ecosystem model. The story of Kindness Worldwide is our story. Everyone is invited to write the future chapters of this beautiful story together, which I'm convinced will be the most beautiful yet. But it all begins by being aware of this movement that's well underway, that's gaining momentum, and inviting everyone into it. With awareness becomes more momentum, more impact. So just visit kindnessworldwide.org. You'll see all the resources, everything you need to know. My email, reach out to me, ksmith@kindnessworldwide.org. Happy to help, happy to bring the magic of kindness to communities anywhere and everywhere, including yours.
Thank you so much. Well, we'll definitely have to touch base, especially about that premiere and movie here at the George Mason University community. So we'll talk offline about that. But everyone, thank you so much for listening. Please support the Kindness Worldwide initiative and all the resources I'll share in the show notes. As you know, every episode is dedicated to the memory of my late father-in-law, Jeff Kirsch. And so please consider donating to the Jeff Kirsch Anti-Hunger Fund for all his work fighting food insecurity across the United States. Also, if you're a member of the Mason Nation, please consider submitting a Patch for Patriots, which is a way to share kindness. This is a great episode. Give it a like, subscribe, review, and please keep being kind and spreading positivity. And we're out. Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.